Mä kokeilin sitä, mä yritin saada sitä isommaa.
Kiva aloitus, Herkko. Kiva aloitus tässä. Me odotellaan tämmönen surullinen kuva, missä Maario suu auki.
Mä just tuossa edellä kysyin Klauselta varmistuksen siitä, että sekin on sitä mieltä, että me halutaan yksi yhteen puolipeissä kokousfirmasta, me molemmat käytetään ja Klaus vastasi, että joo.
Että ei täytyy kysyä, kun me verrataan sitä.
Joo, molemmat pyydetään tästä. Mä sinne kysyin sen takia, että ne on yhdessä alussa. Ne voidaan auttaa järjestää selkeä.
Streaming sitä
no siis muuta kysyttiin, että onko se oli sun idea panostaa just tälleen.
tässä joita kehitetään ja hyödytään myös siitä, mitä se tehdään akselsilla. Joo. Se on joku kartoitus. Avoin. Kun jollain kaukarilla vähän sovinnin kun me siirrytään sinne, niin sitten interface on sovinnin.
Herkko, why don't you come here so
Näin se ei
Ei. Mut mä yritän sen. Mutta ei tee.
Kai.
Se on kuntoon.
Okay. So let's get started. So welcome to this time a breakfast talk here at EIT Labs, Helsinki Co-location Center, and it's a great personal pleasure to have Herkko Hietanen to give us a presentation today on what he's up to. I know Herkko. We met more than 10 years ago at HIIT, have worked a lot together. Herkko has a unique combination of being an excellent lawyer, but also being a guy who really understands technology. If you know a thing called Creative Commons licenses, for example, so Herkko was instrumental in bringing those to Finland, and has done his PhD on things like Creative Commons, what makes it possible to have creative industries, to have more open business models, and so that was what your PhD was on. After HIIT, you worked in a software company and startups, and now you have a startup of your own. And it's called, it has a very internationally appealing name, Verkkolakimies. But I think the easy way to translate is that it's a net lawyer, lawyer on the net. So that's, I think, what you will be mostly talking about today. So thanks for coming, Herkko. You are a resident, of course, here, so people might have seen you.
Maybe something worth mentioning is that after after graduating, he went to Harvard and MIT.
Oh, there are all these things. You've been to Harvard and MIT and Berkeley and all that. But that's great, Herkko.
Okay, so there's nothing as uncertain as startups. So I decided to examine what could be the most certain things that you can make money out of when you build a startup. There's two things that you cannot avoid in this world, and those are debt and taxes. So if you find a business model that relies on those two, you're destined to succeed. So I decided to look at what happens when people die. About 1% of Finns die every year. Amount is about the same in every industrial country, and it's a very big transaction legal-wise. And there are certain things that all the deceased families of the deceased have to do after the death. One of them is perukirja, or the reporting of the assets of the deceased, because the taxman is interested when a lot of assets change hand, and they want to know what the deceased owned and who's going to get those assets. And in some cases, they put a death tax on. After every death, there is a tax report which is filed, and this happens even if there's actually no death taxes like there is in Sweden. Currently, there isn't. So basically, there's usually a lawyer who does this job. He collects the information about the deceased and the relatives who inherit the dead person and the assets and the debts that the deceased had. He fills in a form which is called in Finland perukirja. It's a probate. In US, the process is called probate. And then after that, the assets are divided to the people who inherit, the relative, basically. So this is the process how it goes nowadays. The lawyer collects them, puts them into a document, and the lawyer charges about 1,000 euro per deceased. And then there can be some third parties, for example, in Finland the biggest asset that people own is basically their houses. So somebody comes in and gives an estimate. Usually there's banks involved in this process as well, because you have to report all the assets and evaluate them as well, because there's no, if you own a house, there's no certain way to know that, okay, it's easy to say when there's a shares, you can get the daily value of those shares, but for flats, you usually need somebody, an expert, to give an estimate of how much it's worth. This is used for the taxation value. So death as a legal business, 1%. In Finland, that means about 50,000 people. Average rate is 1,000 euros. So it's a 50 million business in Finland alone, and about 250 million business in Nordic countries. So it's a fairly large business. However, the lawyers are interested nowadays only about the legal part, filling out the documents, and this means that they are leaving a lot of money on the table. So if you look at the death as a non-legal business, so if we think about an average assets of a Finnish person, it's about 80,000 euros. And if we got 50,000 people dying, there's 4 billion euros which are changing hands every year, and this is the business of death. These numbers are roughly the same in Sweden. The average number that people own is about 120,000. So Swedes are a bit more wealthy than Finnish. So it's a big business. So how to change this? Currently, what happens is when a person dies, the relatives go to a funeral home and say that, oh my God, we are so sad. What should we do next? And then the funeral parlor fixes funerals, and they recommend usually a lawyer who steps in. They have a meeting. There's exchange of paperwork. The relatives will go to a bank, get the latest bank account information. They will go and retrieve all the necessary information. So the business model that we are implementing is basically a web service which automates a big part of this process. It does this by retrieving some of the information that's readily available from online databases. For example, here when you log in, it's, by the way, fully built on Google software stack. So you can fill in the deceased information, and it retrieves from the public registry, Finnish registry of all the where all the personal information of Finnish citizens is stored. It retrieves all the information. So basically you have to fill in your personal ID number or the deceased personal ID, and it retrieves the name, the address, the profession, also the information of the children of the deceased. And this is part of the work that the lawyers have had to done manually. So basically you only need a sort of like a Google kind of user interface where there's only one number inserted and the system does the rest. So it fills in the information about the deceased, the children, and it's not just the personal information. You could go to a bank or to a stock exchange, get the ownership of what the person owned, or the vehicle registry, get the car that the deceased owned, and you get the mileage as well, so you can have an estimate of how much the car was, or vehicle was valued. So this reduces the workload for the lawyer and the relatives. So what's actually the target audience for the software? It's not the estates. It's not the private person whose relative has died. It's actually the lawyers, because the lawyers are still in charge of doing this work. They need to sign the papers. However, they're spending hours and hours doing kind of like the secretary's work nowadays. So we're targeting actually the lawyers, giving them tools to improve the workflow of doing this better. The second part of the business is actually going after the bigger debt business, the exchange of assets. So when you report that, okay, so I have a real estate, whether it's a flat or a forest land, we enable the estate to get an estimate from a real estate agent or from a forest agent. And it doesn't cost them anything. One of the things that you have to do with the perukirja is you have to estimate how much is the value, and you have to do it accurately, because if you go use a way too high value, then you end up paying too much taxes, and if you use a too low value, then you end up paying more taxes later. So it actually pays to have an accurate estimate. However, when after they these agents, the third parties, give an estimate, they have also a good lead going on, and a lot of times, especially if city folks inherit forest, which is up in the north or central Finland, they don't know what to do with it. So what they want to do is they want to turn it into money. So it's a good way to actually start a sales process by giving an estimate. And once you have the estimate, forestry, for example, is very liquid. You can sell it just like shares almost. There's a laser scanners flying around in Finland, and they get a very accurate estimate of what the forest is worth. So you know how much you get when you sell the land, even not going to the real estate. So we take a cut from all the leads that we generate for the real estate agents. When they sell the house, actually get about 30% of the fee that they collect. So if you think about this, this is the second kind of one part is getting the fee from the lawyer for improving their workflow. The second part of the business is getting the lead money from the third parties who benefit from the transaction of debt. The third part that we actually do is not just collecting this information, but once the information is collected and the lawyer has checked that it's correct, the system enables the lawyer to generate all the necessary documents. So it's not just that they are doing it for fun or so that they can move the estate or share it with the real estate agents, but it's also because they have to actually generate the perukirja and part of that is we have connected it with Google Documents, so every estate will have their own folder, and the lawyers will see all the documents that are generated, and it's not just the documents which are generated by the system, it's something we enable the estate or banks or any third party to drop files into these folders. So they'll have a website where they can go and drop files, and it will show up in the lawyer's folder, and they can collect and keep organized all the files for the client. And after everything is done, basically what we enable is to electronically sign the document, so that people don't have to travel. A lot of people hate their brothers and they don't want to go to a meeting. They don't. Their parents have died and they don't want to see each other. So having an electronic signature system, or it could be that they love their sisters, but they don't want to travel to the other side of either Europe or the country. So it saves money also having this electronic signature. Because we collect this data in an electronic form, we can provide the tax authorities also data in electronic form. So JSON files to tax authorities. Today, if you file a tax report of the deceased in Helsinki, you get a tax decision in 12 months. The line is 12 months long because they receive a bunch of papers and they have to type them in and make the decisions. However, if you have that data in an electronic form, in a well-structured JSON file, you can actually automate the process in that end as well. I think this is something that actually the tax authorities might be willing to enable easy submission, and also they would probably, when negotiating of them, actually paying for the data, because they enables them to save a lot of work. So that's the business model. Three-sided markets there. This is something we had. So we had two EIT master students build the core system. It's built around Google services. It basically has a lot of key components like Google Drive, which enables the sharing of the documents, generation of the documents, and the storing of the documents. And it runs on AngularJS. If you haven't checked out Firebase, by the way, I would strongly recommend it. It was also purchased by Google, so I think future-wise the service is pretty well protected, because a lot of these services trip over when the support for the new technologies is lost. But Google as a big brother in this case it's a good thing to have. This is what a lawyer would basically see once he has used the system, or this is what remains after the service has been used. There's the documents which are generated by the system. There's a bunch of things that the banks or the funeral homes send their invoices, which would land up in the uploads, and so it generates this kind of a well thought out view. So my original plan was actually to talk about some of the other services that we've done, but I think would make more sense to start the discussion, have your comments about this, and broaden the scope of the presentation. What do you guys think?
Sure. Please.
Can I have a detailed question? Like I have gone through this in a traditional way myself, but I did not quite understand like how could the net lawyer get access to this kind of banking information, etc.? Isn't it all like behind the schemes of protection inside banks? Banks don't give such information out.
Yeah, basically you have to do integration with their systems. Same thing with the national registry information, but there are APIs that exist, and they get actually pretty quickly the data that, or the information that a person has died, because we're serving only the professional community of lawyers, so it's easier for them to actually negotiate a deal with a bank or with a väestörekister, because of the registration talks that you get an access to this information. So we know who are all users. We're not serving the public in large, but currently how we're tackling this, we don't have access to APIs to the bank account information, but we send a link to the bank saying that you can submit this document. It's something that they normally do. They send it over snail mail, their last bank account information.
So the customer of net lawyer needs to have a contract with the net lawyer, and the net lawyer is only authorized to get such information that concerns of his customer, and there needs to be a certificate of this relationship to the bank with the request of getting the information via API.
Yeah.
So it's pretty sensitive issue to me as a private person.
Yeah. Well, what the bank can do is they don't have to give every client's information to these requests. They can check that there's certain length when a person dies. In 3 months you have to do this process. So what a bank can do is they can check that has this person died? Has this person died recently? And then they can check that is this person who's requesting the information a legitimate customer of theirs. So it's it slightly reduces the risk, but the risk still exists. Same thing with the public registry of the information, the väestörekisterikeskus. They can do the similar kind of check. Is this a legit request for information?
So what if the case is more complicated, like if there is a will or there are multiple wills and there's a dispute over the validity of those, and some parties have a hidden property and some have stolen property, and you know, all that. How does that fit into the picture?
That's why the lawyer is actually needed. That's why we don't want to go after the private person market or the individuals who use this. A lot of the expertise of the lawyers is involved in advising their clients. This is just reducing the secretary's work, kind of what the lawyer has to do. So, but in complicated matters, a good lawyer is still needed.
Maybe a related just a short question about this will. I mean, this will is not needed to be registered anyway. So how can this electronic system know there is a will? Like if you have what is this avioehto? Avioehto gets registered to the maistraatti administration, but wills are not.
Yeah. Well, the goal is not to totally automate the system. There's no way of knowing, for example, that somebody has received a will. They're called legati. There's no way, because as you said, they are not registered. So this is something that the lawyer would have to fill in. There's a way to add people to the estate, and the receiver of the will would be one of those. And but the lawyer or one of the receiver of the will would be could actually add the will in electronic form into the system as well. So
yes, true. So it's possible to utilize the system
and
by feeding manual information in addition. Yeah.
And it shows up in the final document as well.
So it seems like, I'm not from a legal background, but it seems like in the legal world a lot of things and the processes are codified and it's rather explicit. But what has revealed now, it seems like it can be very complex as well, and it does require the human lawyer. And surely this is understood by all law firms. So they have some sort of internal in-house process or IT system of sorts, which might be comparable to yours, I presume. Is that realistic to assume?
No.
No. Okay. So
lawyers work with typewriters.
Is that so?
Unfortunately.
Well, it's an opportunity for you.
Yeah.
Yes,
so there's a lot of need or an opportunity to create tools for lawyers. There are still a lot of US law firms that use WordPerfect. So that's the closest that they get to the IP.
And when they use Word, they use it in a very peculiar way. They press the enter at the end of each line, and when they want to change page, they count empty lines. It's totally uneditable what comes out of most law firms.
Yeah, and when it comes to perukirja, this document that the system is creating, it's a lot of times it's the small law firms that are generating this. So they don't have the muscle of the big law firms to start software development projects. So in a sense, it's a kind of like a fertile market. However, at the same time, it means because they are the biggest law firms, or it's like usually 2 or 3 lawyers who are doing maybe 100 of these documents every year. You can calculate it's about 100,000 euros, which is comes ahead of it. You also, if you have 50,000 of these people who die in Finland, you can calculate that it requires a lot of sales effort to reach all the lawyers who are doing this. However, it's less of a sales work than going after individual estates. And that's why we selected the channel approach. Also because of the issue of complicated legal issues that might be to be resolved. But in a sense, there's no real reason why you wouldn't go after the individual estates as well. It's not first year.
How about the legitimacy of the documents? Because I have the feeling that still a lot of documents that they are kind of real or legal or kind of that they're authentic. They have to be kind of real paper printed and with some real signature or some significant stamp on it. And how this then affects that you try to do it all electronically.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing stopping the users from printing the documents out. They get the Google Docs, which they can actually we email them PDF and the Word versions because Google Docs is so awesome. You can just share them over email, and so you can just print them out, sign them manually, and send them. You just lose some of the benefits of the system. So there's nothing stopping people from doing that. But generally, there is legislation already in Finland which enables you to trust electronic signatures just like you would trust biometric and signatures. But the trust is still not there, I agree.
So flow is that you send the document in electrical form, prints out and signs, and then sends the paper to the lawyer after the signing, or scans it in and sends it, or
no, the lawyer actually prints it out and invites all the estate members to come into a meeting and sign them. That would be the workflow. And then the lawyer takes all the documents and sends them in a paper form. That would be the old school.
Yeah. So and now you try to have it so that there's an electrical signature, but how that works in practice for, if, let's say my grandparents or grandparent has passed away and I would get some paper to be signed.
Yeah. Well, basically, when the lawyer is happy with the document, you just click a button and then the system turns it into a PDF and sends it to we have a partner service provider who enables electronic signature. And then the receiver gets an email saying that go to this link and take out your tupas or bank account, bank information, or your mobile certificate, and you can sign the paper.
Do you have any statistics that in how many cases in Finland when a person dies, the relatives are using attorney office to do this, and in how many cases the relatives are doing that themselves?
So there's actually 3 options that could happen after a person dies, how to conduct this process. One is to do it yourself. So it's not rocket science. It's, as I said, it's usually small law firms who might not have the smartest lawyers, or who are doing it as part of their bigger law practice, or like non-specialized law practice. So it's easy to do it yourself as well. There's some risks, of course, and some people actually decided to outsource because they're not paying it. It's coming out of the deceased assets. So it's kind of like one of those rare situations where private individuals are not spending their own money to buy legal services. So outsourcing that is a good option. So what they can do is they can go to a law firm. If the deceased had any assets, they can pay the €1,000 or so and get it done. The other, option 2. Option 3 is if the deceased didn't have any assets. He was poor, and a lot of poor people die as well nowadays. So what would happen, they would go to a public legal office and get a free document done by a government lawyer. Government lawyers actually have access to many of these databases, though, so they have already done some streamlining of process. We tried that as a marketing trick, or use that as a channel, but because they have their own tools. Plus, it's really hard to get into the public procurement sector, in the public sector, to get your software first.
But is it so that typically people are using law firms to do that? So in most of cases.
If there's assets, usually people tend to use law firms.
So may I ask about this trust issue in let's say digital things? Usually when there's a very conservative or traditional industry, like the legal industry, I think initially people are a bit scared. So, well, the computer is giving me something, and can I trust it? How does one lobby? Do you have some ideas on how to lobby for a change in mentality?
Well, one thing that lawyers understand, that's greed. You touch their wallet, you have them. So the idea of for them to actually do less work, because a lot of the work is already automated. Of course, we charge a small fee for every estate. However, if they can make more money doing less work, which means that basically if there's any assets in the estate, if they get an estimate and a real estate agent selling it, they make more money because they get a cut of that as well. So instead of using 3 hours to do the documents, they'll use 1 hour and get 1,500 for example.
For instance, if the system becomes known by the public and it grows to such an extent that it could be used by the normal citizens, surely they won't be willing to pay for these expensive legal consultants, yeah? And that changes the game.
If it's only secretary work that they are doing, but however, often there can be issues like there can be underage children who are inheriting, then you have to get the court's permission to get another proxy to represent the child, and it can be demanding. And I went around in the law firms asking questions of what kind of issues are you facing when people are doing this themselves. Well, basically if you screw it up, and it gets returned from the tax offices, then the law firm would still have to do it again, and they would end up paying again. So there's certain need for that legal expertise even in this kind of system.
Have you benchmarked another market where this has happened, like the US or Sweden or whichever?
Yeah. So in US, it's a huge legal market there. In the past 5 years, 5 years ago there were like only a handful of legal startups, and nowadays there's more startups in legal sector than anywhere else because it's still kind of untapped market there. In UK the same, the US companies are moving in from US. The first stand is UK because it's the same kind of legal system and same language, so it's easy to access there. So there is a lot of things going on in UK. There, I haven't seen in US any of these perukirja services.
They have for divorce.
They have for divorce, and there's several services where you can draft like NDAs or shareholders agreement online. And some of them are even free nowadays because the big companies like Cooley is providing these templates available for free because they want to drive people into their regular law practice after they created these documents. All this started when the big law firms started sharing their own internal tools. At first, using those internal tools, it was just terrible. You actually have to be an expert in that field of law to understand like some of the complicated issues of, for example, shareholders agreement. They shared their tool, but you couldn't understand the questions or the options that it was providing. If you managed to get through all the questions, you would get a document, but as a founder of a company, you probably wouldn't understand what it was about. So they were relying that even if we share this tool, you can't understand what it generates. It isn't the case in this, of course, but still the expertise is, I think it's something that is going to be needed even after these tools come more complex. But in UK, there was a service that did exactly this, what I was describing. They didn't have the integration. It was sold to, I think it was sold to a funeral home chain, because this enables, in the simple cases, a funeral home's secretary could fill out most of this work and generate more profits for each deceased funeral.
Could you mention some other services this net lawyer provides to lawyers than this perukirja?
So yeah, we've done our share of pivots and pilot services. One of the services we have been running, or the first service we launched, was a prenup service where it's a very simple, I think there's 8 questions asked, and you pay €100 and you get an email. This is meant for the people who are getting married or have recently got married. Provides them with a prenup, and they get it immediately. It's for the I want it now generation. So you don't have to go to a law firm and or send an email to a lawyer, wait for a day or two to get the prenup done. Like it's kind of like a wizard that does €100. You can check it out. It's on Verkkolakimies. Then another service which is more into the packaging services, what we've done is for the startups who are struggling with all the legal mandatory employers requirements. There's about 20 documents when you grow up to be a startup which has more than 10 employees. You have to fill like, let's see, you'll see. What do we have there? Like
Equality program.
Equality program, or like
Substance abuse policies.
Substance abuse, right. So there's about 20 of these, and it takes about, for an HR professional, about a month of work to actually get them all done. And so what we've done is we've packaged all these documents, and especially nice if you have a government come. They do a lot of checkups. So, for example, a year ago, 400 IT companies in Helsinki area were evaluated if they had the documents or not. And they were given a month to fix all these issues. So, what we've done is we provide the documents so that you can actually, if the government comes knocking on your door, you can call us, and we got freedom of information request that we actually received a questionnaire that they conduct for every employer, so we can provide the right answers also. So plus all the documents that are required. So that's one of the services, but it's more into one of the things that we have enabled to start a startup is that we've had a law firm, or I've had a law firm going on for the past 10 years, and it's more into the services, the packaging of the services that the law firm offers. My colleague and I were sitting over there next to the window, and we developed these Verkkolakimies services. However, we also help our clients with the legal issues, and because of this, well, the network lawyer is kind of like the tenant here, so we're enjoying the benefits of this co-location center. But because we are also doing some of the law firm's work, we actually suggested like Guy to have a clinic here for the resident startups or EIT startups. So if you have legal questions, we still haven't decided the date, but for the duration of our stay here, we'll be giving free legal advice here, or either to your startup or just to personal needs as well. So
if you think about having a prenup, now it's your chance.
You don't need us to do a prenup. We actually have a service, but if you need if you have legal questions about your startup, don't be afraid to come and talk to us. The first hour is free, so to say. I guess that's it.
Yes. Any questions for Herkko still? One more?
If I may, yeah. If there's no one else.
Go ahead.
Okay. So it seems like this is quite a, as you say, a fertile field of development, the digitization of legal services. And it's not so common to see law students getting involved in digitization. I don't believe there are any law students here today, are there? So I mean, surely that's an important thing to have. Do you have kind of ideas or motivation to encourage law students to go, say, follow in your footsteps? Or not?
So, looking at the market in Finland, if you're a member of a bar association, the bar rules actually forbid you to do any other business, another legal business. So if you think about developing software like this, which would be kind of widely used, the bar membership rules actually forbid you to do it. I think it's hurting the business in Finland especially. It's also providing us kind of like competitive advantage because the law firms can only develop software for themselves, and that developing good software takes a lot of time and resources. To understand anything about web services, you probably would have to have at least basic knowledge of coding, what happens in web services, how they work. And it has really helped. I started coding myself a year ago, doing it 8 hours a day, and now I've had help with Karens and Ruth in developing this, but I can basically develop it myself nowadays. So getting small details right, as somebody said, that it's very, the law is very strict on how the process should go forward, so having a lawyer who can tweak the service and do it themselves, because it needs a lot of tweaking developing services like this. So understanding the software, being able to develop this is crucial. So I urge people to go into software development. However, if you look at the legal training in Finland, it's master's degree and it's 6 years master's degree. It's only legal training. In US, for example, you get your bachelor's degree first, which could be in computer science or usually in English literature if you're a lawyer or philosophy, for example. And then you go to a 3-year law school after that. But you have another training from another field, and in Finland that doesn't exist. So it's very much up to people who have double education to go into this field.
Well, this is a rather general question, but related to the previous one. So, I mean, in general, every sector of business has been disrupted by internet and digitalization. Either it has been like a media and commerce, or it will be disrupted like healthcare and some others. So with the statements of the typewriters and such, do you suggest that this has not yet happened to law, and there is yet a big potential for that disruption to happen?
Not in Finland, not in Europe. In the US it's already in progress. Now the question is, can we catch up? Europe is harder market because in the US, well, there's states legislation that slows them down a bit. But nevertheless, there's the federal legislation, so you can design services for a market of 300 million. In Europe, it's a lot harder. There's EU legislation, but they tend to be something that the national countries actually have to implement themselves. So it's the language barrier, it's also the small fracture of market. However, I think there's for a service like this, perukirja service, you can basically do it in Finland, then you can duplicate it in Sweden, in Nordic countries at least, probably in other markets as well. There's some small details, but you need to partner to go after those markets. But I think big changes are going to happen in the legal profession. It's going to be slow. It's going to be slower than in other markets, but there's a lot of signs that it's going to take place.
But do you think that the big law firms will be affected by this change, or is it rather the small ones?
They are already affected. In the US, the trademark profession, trademark lawyers are hit hard because you can file your trademark applications with, there's really good services that do trademark applications. But a friend of mine who just returned from the Silicon Valley law firm said that their trademark departments in every big law firm is hit hard because of this commerce.
So how the Finnish law firms take on to this service? Do they think that first of all, is the billing based on the hour? I assume.
Yes.
Yeah. So they would spend less time and they would be paid less, or do they think that they can do more cases then, or are they comfortable of doing easy secretary work which would pay?
That's a good question. Probably it would mean that they would go into like fixed pricing. They would know how much the client is actually additional advising for it. I don't know how they price it, to be honest. We're still working with our pilot customers. The software isn't quite ready yet. This is one of those, if you serve actually business to business, if you have a business to business solution, you have to get it right from the beginning, because you don't get a second chance usually. When people start to spread the word that it's not right, that's generating problems, then you lose the market share. So we have a bunch of no idea what's I guess this is a good time to stop guys standing and
Well, yes.
having a coffee.
So, a couple of things before we stop and give a big hand to Herkko. Is I would like to know how many of the persons present here, and I'm not talking about Nokia who would like to have legal assistance, but the startups are interested in actually using this opportunity. Okay, at least one. Well, that's a nice initiative, and let's go forward with that. Then, before ending, I just want to remind you that the next lunch talk we will have in 2 weeks, we will have Yrjö Neuvo talk about the future of Moore's law. So that in 2 weeks' time. So I hope to see you all then. Now, thanks Herkko for a very nice presentation.